Good afternoon, Jayhawks, and welcome into this week's episode of RockChalkReplay. I'm your host, Andrew Lind. On this afternoon's show, Kristen Howell takes us inside Kansas women's sports and tells us how the ladies have recently performed. Izzy English will recap the recent NHL games. Jordan Ziegler discusses the college football playoff. Kyle Mathis has everything on KU football's big win over Texas. And finally, Riley Kramer will have a Week 10 NFL update. All this and more on RockChalkReplay. KU football has had a rocky season under head coach Lance Leipold, showing only glimpses of improvement from last season. But this past weekend against Texas, the Jayhawks showed out. Kyle Mathis has more.
Thanks, Andrew. The big talking point, all around campus over the weekend was the KU football win over Texas. Not only was it the second win of the season for KU, but it was the biggest upset in Big 12 conference history. KU was heading into the game as 30-point underdogs and were 1-8 heading into this game. So let's see how KU got this win. We'll start in the first quarter as KU got out to a pretty nice lead. They scored 2 touchdowns to take a 14-0 lead. The Jayhawks started fast with a 3-yard touchdown run from Devin Neal to take a 7-0 lead. The Jayhawks then forced a huge turnover where they forced the fumble and got the ball in great field position right in Texas territory. After the turnover and late in the first quarter, tight end Mason Fairchild caught an 11-yard touchdown pass from Jalen Daniels to make it 14-0 Jayhawks. Now, the second quarter is when it got into a fireworks show. Texas scored 2 touchdowns within 5 minutes to tie the game at 14. But then, Kansas had something to say about the response from the Longhorns. Jalen Daniels had an incredible 9-yard touchdown run that put Kansas in the lead, This will make it 21-14 with the Jayhawks on top. The Jayhawks weren't done yet, though. Jalen Daniels threw a beautiful pass in the flat to Devin Neal, who walked it into the end zone to make it a 2-score game for the Jayhawks. But Texas gave Kansas another huge play almost immediately. Jacoby Bryant saw the pass from Thompson all the way and scored a 31-yard pick six to make it 35-14 Jayhawks at the half. KU had the perfect lead at the half. They were up big, and they had the momentum on their side in a hostile environment. Fans were starting to leave for Texas even at halftime, but this is exactly when things started to heat up. Texas scored quickly with a 1-yard touchdown run from Casey Thompson, but it was Devin Neal with a 10-yard touchdown run to extend the lead back up to 3 scores. It was 42-21 Kansas on top. Texas then scored 2 touchdowns back-to-back and made it a ball game with a 42-35 KU lead. A huge touchdown pass from Jalen Daniels to Kwame Lassiter for 2 yards made it a 49-35 scoreline. KU was on top. Texas would score 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes to send the game into overtime. The KU fans into heartbreak for the moment and to send Yik Yak into a frenzy. Then we had overtime. Texas started overtime quickly with an 8-yard touchdown pass from Thompson to Marcus Washington to take the lead, 56-49. KU wasn't done. With a huge conversion on 4th down, they set it up for a 2-yard touchdown run by Devin Neal. Now, this was the season for Texas and KU. KU scores a 2-point conversion. They have the best season in at least 3 years. If Texas stops them, they are just 1 win away from bowl eligibility. With Daniels rolling right, he slotted one right into the breadbasket of Jared Casey, who scored the game-winning 2-point conversion to send Lawrence and the whole country into chaos. Instagram was going insane. The Big 12 was going insane. Yik Yak was telling people to tear down the goalpost at Memorial Field. A couch was lit on fire in the stadium parking lot. There was a lot of chaos, but let's see what Jared Casey had to say about his game-winning catch.
Just a surreal moment for me. Being from a small town in Kansas, going to the University of Kansas, I've been a Kansas fan my whole life. I just saw the play open up. I saw JD scramble out to the right. I was going to the right and just popped in my hand, so it's a surreal moment.
KU had 420 total offensive yards, with Texas having 574. Texas's 4 turnovers completely ruined the game for them and gave KU the chance to win all the way. Jalen Daniels had 202 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. Devin Neal had 143 yards with 3 touchdowns. on the ground, and Kwame Lassiter had 68 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Let's also not forget the historic performance for Texas's Xavier Worthy, who had 152 receiving yards and 3 touchdown catches. With KU's next game against TCU, they will be riding the wave of momentum as they pulled off one of the biggest upsets in Big 12 history. The Big 12 is in shambles after this win, and even the win that Baylor had over Oklahoma to end the undefeated season for the Sooners is even bigger. Or not as big, but a little bit big. Speaking of other college football games around the country, let's send it to Jordan for a college football update and his predictions on who's in and who's out in the college football playoff race. Jordan?
Thank you, Kyle. I'm here to give you the update on college football playoff picture and if anyone has been eliminated from playoff contention. The only team I believe to be eliminated this week is Texas A&M. The Aggies already had 2 losses coming into the game, but with a win over Alabama on their resume and the possibility to make the SEC championship game, they still had faint playoff hopes. The Aggies suffered a fairly uncompetitive loss to Ole Miss on game day, giving them their 3rd loss of the year and pretty much eliminating them from any SEC contention. Texas A&M may be eliminated, but another Texas team served a massive blow to Oklahoma's playoff hopes. The 13th-ranked Baylor Bears took down undefeated 8th-ranked Oklahoma Sooners. Baylor fans were so caught off guard by the win that they stormed the field before the game even ended. The confusion caused by the early field storm had Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley furious. His anger could not stop the fact that OU was taking their 1st loss of the year. I don't think this loss is enough to eliminate OU from playoff contention just yet, but it will certainly make things tough. In order for Oklahoma to make the playoffs, they will need to win out and win the Big 12 championship with a lot of help from Ohio State and Oregon. Finally, let's talk about what the playoff outlook could be when they release the rankings on Tuesday night. If you look at last week's college football playoff rankings, I predicted the top 4 teams correctly, and I'm looking to keep that streak going now. In all honesty, I do not think anything will change in the top 4. Georgia will still be 1, Alabama 2, Oregon 3, and Ohio State 4, with Cincinnati and Michigan as 5 and 6 being the first 2 out. Because there will likely be no change in the rankings, let's see what a team like Cincinnati or Michigan needs to do to get in. Cincinnati, following a big win over USF on Friday, needs to go undefeated and hope Oregon or Ohio State loses another game somewhere along the line. Michigan, with a close win to hold off Penn State, controls their destiny because if they beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten, they are in. In a season that has been completely unpredictable, there is one thing for sure, and that is the last few weeks of the season will be fun, and we are far from having the top 4 teams officially set. After the break, Chris and Hal will have more on KU women's athletics, and Izzy English will have NHL highlights. Stay with us.
No one takes drugs expecting to become addicted. You should know that addiction can happen to anyone because it's a disease of the brain. That also means recovery is possible. Addiction doesn't have to be permanent, and the state of Kansas is ready to assist you in every step of the way. Visit findtreatment.gov or call the Kansas Substance Abuse Referral Line at 866-645-8216.
The KU women's basketball team got its season started this past Wednesday against SIU Edwardsville. Senior Anaya Thomas led the team with 25 points. Their next game was on Sunday against Tennessee State. The Jayhawks beat the Tigers 83-60. Once again, senior Anaya Thomas was the leading scorer with 19 points. The team moves to 2-0 to start the season. Their next game will be on Wednesday here against Omaha. KU's women's cross country placed 12th in the NCAA Midwest Regionals. Lona Natima led the team with a 13th place finish, which also qualified her to compete in the NCAA Cross Country Championship this Saturday. KU diving team will be back in action at the Mizzou Invite November 18th and 20th, and the swimming team will be competing in the Kansas Classic in Topeka on November 19th through 21st. Kansas volleyball will be back in action this weekend as they play their final home games against TCU. The Horned Frogs are 0-8 here in Lawrence, and their last match against the Jayhawks, they lost 3-1. It should be a fun series to watch as the Jayhawks are 12-0 for the year and 4-8 in the Big 12, while TCU is 8-14 for the year and 2-10 in the Big 12 Conference. It'll also be senior night for the Jayhawks as they play their last home games of the season before heading over to K-State next weekend to finish out the year. Good luck to all of our teams as they compete this week. Now to you, Izzy.
We have some new standings this week in the NHL as the Minnesota Wilds are leading in the Western Conference. This week they played the Coyotes, Golden Knights, and the Krakens. The Wilds lost to the Golden Knights on Thursday as they could not come back from the Knights' 3-0 lead in the second period. They ended up getting 2 goals in the third period with the final score of 3-2. They will face off against the San Jose tomorrow.
Speaking of losses, the Panthers have had quite a tough past couple of days. They fell to the Penguins 3-2 in a shootout and then lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-2 in overtime on Saturday. But if the Panthers keep their number 1 spot in the Atlantic Division, they're going to have to step up with their offense in these next few games.
Yeah, and yesterday the Oilers faced off against the St. Louis Blues in a close matchup. With just 37 seconds left in the game, Kailer Yamamoto scored off a pass from Leon Draisaitl to get them ahead 5-4 and win the game. "It's huge," Yamamoto said. "Anytime you can get a game-winning goal, it's huge. I'm definitely going to try to take that and build off of that." The Oilers are currently first in the Pacific Division and will play in the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow.
I'm just excited to see how this year will unfold as the NHL season quickly moves along with bigger upsets each week. After the break, Riley Kramer will have more on NFL Week 10.
From adversity, we rose. We made history and became pioneers, voyagers, champions, Jayhawks. And when our chant rises, haunting and hallowed, Jayhawks are telling the world what's near. Victory.
Last night, the Chiefs were in Vegas hoping to turn their season around against their long-standing rival, the hated Raiders. The Chiefs got on the board early in the game, scoring on their first drive and keeping the energy high throughout the game. Derek Carr and the Raiders offense weren't able to keep up with Mahomes as he threw 5 touchdown passes, looking like the old Chiefs team everyone is used to. The Chiefs defense matched the energy, only allowing 2 touchdowns to take the win in Vegas 41-14. The Packers shut out Seattle on their own turf in a game that was definitely a battle of the defenses. Both teams struggled to find the end zone on offense while their defense proved to be stronger, keeping the score only 3-0 for the Packers going into the half. Green Bay defense wasn't letting Seattle on the board at all, ending the game with a win for the Packers 17-0. In another low-scoring game, the Ravens traveled to Miami only to be upset by the Dolphins 22-10. The Dolphins defense had 4 sacks against quarterback Lamar Jackson, keeping up the energy from their Week 9 performance where they totaled 5 sacks against the Texans. Miami is now 3-7, putting them in front of the Jets in the AFC East. The Cowboys were looking to get their record back on track in Week 10 after taking their second loss last week against the Broncos in Dak Prescott's first game back since being injured. The Cowboys did more than show out as they hosted the Falcons in Dallas this week, scoring 29 points in the second quarter alone and holding Atlanta to just a field goal throughout the entire game. Dak Prescott's energy was back as he threw 2 touchdowns and rushed 1 for the Cowboys to take the win 43-3. Back to you, Andrew.
That'll do it for this week's episode of Rock Chalk Replay. Next week we will have more on KU basketball, a look into Week 11 of the NFL, NHL recap, women's sports, and more. For our entire crew, I'm Andrew Lind. We will see you next week. Until then, stay safe and Rock Chalk, Jayhawks.